Hi, everyone. I am so honored to have my friend and former client here with us today, Heather Shelton. Hi, Heather. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Beth.
I'm so excited. I really love interviewing my clients. Heather was in my True Path Entrepreneur Group Mastermind in the year 22, 23. She's also in my kind of secret cosmological coaching moon school that some people know about, but not many, which we'll have to do a whole other podcast episode on. And Heather's been doing some really great work out there in the world, and I wanted to bring her on and share her story with you. But let me tell you a little bit about her bio before we get into it. So Heather Shelton is a nurse herbalist who has worked with botanical medicine for over 2 decades. She provides consultations that include herbal medicine, cannabinoid therapy, nutritional guidance, and healthy lifestyle changes. Heather blends her botanical medicine experience with her traditional nursing experience to offer a unique, holistic approach to care. She's committed to working with mind, body, and spirit and is excited to support others on their healing journeys. Heather is an instructor for psilocybin facilitators in Oregon and is now the assistant director at Epic Healing Eugene, the first licensed psilocybin service center in the United States. She's a member of United Plant Savers, the International Association of Psychedelic Nurses, the Cannabis Nurses Network, and the American Cannabis Nurse Association, where she serves on multiple committees. Heather has a deep commitment to the earth and serves as a board member of 2 nonprofits, the Northwest Land Conservation Trust and Fox Hollow Forestland, where she stewards land and leads workshops on herbal medicine, self-sufficiency, and earth-based traditions. Aw, Heather, you are just up to so much in the world. And I would love to hear your story. I know bits and pieces, but of course, until we get to these interviews, I never really know the depths of my clients' stories. How did you become, a nurse, an herbalist, now a psilocybin service center director? Did you know you were going to go into this field when you were young, like a little kid, or what's your story?
Well, no, I didn't know I was going into this when I was young. I don't know if I really had a plan when I was young necessarily. I knew I was going to be a mom. I have done that, or I'm still doing that. But when I was 21, well, maybe I'll bring my psychedelic experience into it since it kind of led me on this path here. I was always a spiritual seeker. Really, when I was 8, I started to go to church by myself. I've been to every denomination church except for the Mormon church where they don't let you in. Really searching for something. And I didn't even really know what that something was, right? I mean, God, I suppose, and Jesus, because that's often what you're hearing about in church, but really looking for trying to figure out what all of that meant. So at 16, I had an experience in a kind of a Christian setting of where hundreds of people were all singing together and singing with this shared love and shared goal. And I had this overwhelming experience of just energy, I guess I'd call it. And so I felt like I'd found God. I'd had this really kind of religious or spiritual experience. And, that was so exciting to me. I'm going to tell you about my dad too, because this is also how I grew up, is I called home and said, "Oh my God, Dad, I found God. It's so amazing." And he yelled to my mom in the other room and said, "Oh my God, did you know that Jesus lives in Richmond? Heather found him down there." So crushing for a moment. But shortly thereafter, I went to my first Grateful Dead concert and also found that I was having this shared spiritual experience with a whole lot of people because we were there with, there for the same purpose, right? To really just dance and love each other and have a good time. And so that was a huge awareness that I didn't need to go to church to find this type of love and spirituality. So fast forward a couple of years, maybe 5 or 6 years, and Jerry Garcia died. And so there was no more Grateful Dead shows to go to. And I decided I was done following the quote unquote correct path. I had been in college and working. And so I got rid of all my belongings and moved to Oregon. and I'd never been to the West Coast. You know, we just got in the car and went. And when I got here, I was such a little hippie then. I was like making clothes and selling them at Saturday market. And I signed up for a midwifery class. I had just read a book by Ina May Gaskin called Spiritual Midwifery, and I was really intrigued by the fact that birth didn't have to be scary and horrible. I'm reading all these stories. This is really amazing. Wow, I'd never heard that you could, that women would have babies in this, you know, held way. And so I signed up to do a little local midwifery class, and I showed up for the first morning of class. And as soon as the teacher started to speak, like the sky opened up and the light shone down, and I had a moment of knowing this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. So that kind of started me on the path, and I started to learn about herbal medicine in relation primarily to women and the childbirth years. But the midwife's husband was a naturopath, and so he also taught us classes. And so then I started to learn about Chinese medicine and different frames of care and how we use supplements and what we would use those for. And so, I mean, that I would say is the beginning. And I've been working with plants in a variety of forms, you know, for over 25 years now. And so I guess it's natural that I would move into some more of these kind of master plant medicines as well. I actually am kind of surprised myself that this is where I am. So as you know, in the mastermind, I actually felt a little out of place in the beginning of the mastermind because there were so many folks there who were there with, you know, psychedelic practices, integration coaches, and, you know, just most of the folks in there had a focus on psychedelics. And so I didn't at the time. You know, I'd worked a little bit with ketamine as a ketamine nurse, but I was really there to grow my own business in herbal medicine. So I find it really funny, actually, that here we are now, the mastermind's over, and I'm directly involved in working with psilocybin and psychedelics. And so I feel like that was part of the magic of me coming to you. So
kind of weird how it landed in your lap. But you know, when you came into the mastermind, you were also a cannabis nurse. And to be honest, I had kind of heard a little bit about it, but I was like, what is this? What is this cannabis nurse movement? You know, you've spoken at conferences, on stages, you're on, you know, boards. Tell us about cannabis nursing, because to me, it makes sense that, of course, then you would go into ketamine and psilocybin and also keep your herbal practice going. But yeah, what is cannabis nursing all about?
So primarily my work in cannabis nursing, well, I came to cannabis nursing, again, actually kind of by accident too. Or it's never by accident, by divine plan, but I wasn't aware of the divine plan at the time. So I got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition in 2011, and shortly thereafter, cannabis became legal, medical cannabis in Vermont, where I was living. And so I was trying to use herbs for my own self to handle my pain and my situation. And I'd created this topical pain salve with a whole lot of herbs and not cannabis. And it was working okay. You know, it helped some. It wasn't really changing my life. And my family came out to Oregon to visit. And I have a dear friend who's a legacy grower. She's been growing a long time. And she had gifted me a little bottle of cannabis infused oil. And I put that on my joints, and it was like, you know, of course the light bulb went off, you know, and I thought, oh my God, this is the missing piece. This is what I'm missing. So I went home and started to add cannabis into my salve, and at the same time started to get these phone calls from elders in the community who had gotten their medical marijuana card and didn't know what to do with it. And honestly, I didn't really know what they should do with it either. You know, I had just figured out, oh, this oil's amazing. And I knew about smoking cannabis, but I didn't really know all the other options. I didn't know anything about the endocannabinoid system yet. So that kind of just sparked my interest, and I started to learn more. And over time, now I work with people a lot who are interested in using cannabis for medicine, and there are so many options to do that. And we have a system called the endocannabinoid system. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but there's a whole organ system in our body that is based on cannabinoids, our human cannabinoids, until we add in phyto or plant cannabinoids. So that's all amazing science that's really people aren't aware of. Most medical professionals aren't even aware of that yet. So I love cannabis. It's changed my life for my autoimmune condition. And now that I live in Oregon, I can grow it myself. So my herb gardens are even more extensive. And it is an entheogen. And I think that's part of the beauty of its medicine. It's definitely the quality of life plant, in my opinion. And, one of the best parts is its ability to bring you into the present moment, right? Because when we're in the present moment, we experience gratitude. And so, whenever I work with a client, I try to bring in all aspects of cannabis. Yes, this can help you with your nausea and vomiting from chemotherapy. And guess what? It also helps kill cancer cells. And really, it can quiet your mind so you can have a moment to give thanks for the time you have and for the family you have and whatever else is coming up. So I still do that work. I love that work. I probably always will in some way be involved in cannabis, I think.
Thanks for sharing. And it's so beautiful because I think it's a realm that a lot of people don't know about or haven't heard about. And then when you came into my mastermind, I remember you were working also with a ketamine clinic, and you were one of the first people I had met who had been bringing in more of this idea of the plant medicines and the rituals and integrating your herbalism work into something like ketamine therapy. Let's talk about that a little, because now that you're also working in psilocybin therapy, I'm also, I'm wondering, like, how are you bridging all these realms together? Because in the end, there's all these amazing plants and, even ketamine can probably, I don't actually even know, but I'm sure it's traced back to some compound that comes from something on Earth, like all chemicals. But yeah, I'm curious, like, how have you brought in your other background into this kind of like, quote, newer work, even though, it's psilocybin is not new. But yeah, do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah. Well, so part of my ketamine work was with Epic Healing. That was the psychedelic that we were working with at the beginning. And we really, the whole purpose of the ketamine is to allow a shift for someone, right? And we know there's some scientific things going on with, creating a new neural pathway or waking up a new neural pathway. And so, in my mind, the experience is just the beginning, right? It's not, we actually have to do some work to support the experience and to have these new pathways grow. Kathy and I part of why we love to work together is because of that spiritual component. So when we would work with our clients with ketamine, we take a moment before, and we don't call anything prayer because that has some interesting connotations for people. So there's some areas where you have to be really delicate, I think, sometimes about some of this. At least the way, maybe the words that I use aren't the words that are comfortable for other people. So I try to keep all of those words out of it. But what we do is we do take a minute where we sit and everybody grounds, and we invite in the medicine of the ketamine, like invite it in. And we invite it in for this person's highest good and for whatever their intention may be. And, it creates a really nice setting. And people actually loved that part of it. And then at the end, again, we come around and kind of, just listen first off to the person who just had their experience. And what I would find is things kind of would come in as they're having their experience of, whatever it might be. And so then I give homework, like a gratitude practice or finding a tree, or somehow, for me, I think one of the challenges for humanity right now is our disconnect from nature. we are nature. We are her. That's science, right? That's scientifically based. So if we want to do evidence-based science, we can say we are nature. But a lot of folks have forgotten that. It's not present in our everyday culture to really appreciate nature and our role in nature. So that's part of what I try to do with folks is bring in ways that they can connect back to the earth. Trees are amazing. You and I've talked about this before. Sit with your back to a tree. I mean, the earth wants to work with us, right? So put your hands on the earth, lay on the earth, like give it to her. She will help transform and help us to heal whatever it is that's happening. So that's kind of how I try to bring some of my tools in. I'm not really sure yet what it's going to look like in psilocybin. I still feel that a lot of people need support in just basic health. Eating vegetables. It's amazing how few people eat vegetables, or if they do eat vegetables, they get peas and green beans, and some iceberg lettuce. And that's great. It's a great place to start, but so I don't know. I hope that I get to incorporate more herbs and nutritional support for the folks that we work with. We'll see what happens. Every day is brand new, and every day we figure out either there's some rule that we need to follow that we weren't expecting, or there's something, it just always looked a little different than what we thought it was going to look like. So.
Wow. Yeah, let's get into it. I want to hear a little bit more about this. So you are running your own herbal apprenticeship program. You're also a practicing herbalist. You also have your own mini farm going on. You still do the cannabis nursing. You still are, last I heard, speaking, and there's conferences you're going to and speaking at. You came to the mastermind with this vision, and now it's I feel like you have 4 times the amount of things actually going on. It's just blown up overnight. Let's hear what you're up to with your own personal, your business, and then we'll get into what's happening at Epic Healing with the psilocybin therapy.
Okay. Well, I do have apprentices. This year I have 2 in-person apprentices, so it's really intimate, which I actually love. And then I have a group online, and that's new. And that's been interesting to share about herbs without being with them in person, So I'm looking forward to some feedback from my students. We're having a really good time. And it's just different. So a new adventure. So I have 2 different apprenticeships I'm running at the same time for 2023. And then I do have a consultation practice that I primarily see people over Zoom and help them either with cannabis or other herbal medicines. A lot of my clients have cancer, so that seems to be, I guess, it's become kind of my specialty or part of my specialty. And yeah. And so thankfully, I haven't been super busy in that realm because I've been so busy with this other work, which I feel really blessed to have. And I don't have a farm anymore. I did have a farm where we used to raise all of our animals and all of our food. I'm just now, this is our 8th year back in Oregon. And so I finally have food growing again. It's the first time I've grown food since I got back here. So that's really exciting. I have extensive herb gardens. And now I get to add cannabis to them, which I just got in the ground a couple weeks ago. So that's been a fun learning adventure for me the last 8 years.
Fun. I love it. And then in between all of this, it seemed like it was this overnight all of a sudden, I guess, because everything feels like it's moving so fast in the psychedelic world, especially out in Oregon and Colorado, where all of a sudden Heather's just involved, entrenched, and next thing you know, it opens. Yeah, let's hear about what's been going on. The service center you're working at has made international news. You're the first it's crazy to think, right? You're the first in the United States. You've actually been a huge part of history because I don't know. I don't believe that this is going backwards at this point. I think we're only going forward. But yeah, let's hear about what your role is there and what it's been like. And, it's been very interesting. And of course, we can get into also some, a little bit of the controversy.
Yeah. Well, so my friend Kathy is who she and I worked the ketamine clinic together. It's actually been her counseling practice is kind of where this all stems from. And we had such a great time working together, actually, in the world of ketamine that, I knew she was applying to have a service center. And, the vision was, I think, still having our own practices and having the option of being able to offer psilocybin to some clients, So really in this very small scale, our service center is 2 offices and a bathroom. So it's a little office suite in a leased building, where it's not a big giant operation. And so we've been working towards that, and as inspection was coming, I was more involved in helping to create, policy and procedure and make sure we had all of our documents. I do teach for a psilocybin facilitator training program here too, thankfully, because I learned a lot by doing that and really got to know the regulations well and just get a deeper understanding of this work. And so, we're preparing for inspection and getting all these things done. And all of a sudden we became the first approved. And so, it took its own life, really. Our wait list exploded from 55 people to over 500 in the first weekend. And so it's very clear that people want this therapy or want this. I can't call it therapy. So there's a whole lot of nuance in the regulations. For psilocybin has been approved in Oregon for therapeutic use, but it is not psilocybin assisted therapy. So we can't.
That's new to me. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we have to take a non-directive approach, meaning really pretty hands off. Even though a lot of therapists are facilitators, they're not necessarily allowed to be doing psychedelic therapy with the folks that they're facilitating with. So there's just some nuance in the language that way. We're actually not really supposed to call it medicine even. We have to call it psilocybin or mushrooms or product, which is, of course, right, because we love plants and plants are medicine. And so that's been tricky. That's just one of those things that keeps popping out of our mouths. So yeah, the wait list grew. Suddenly just felt a lot of internal pressure to get all of our ducks in a row so we can get started. So what we have discovered really is we want to do it the right way. And so rushing is not the right way, even though now our wait list is about 1,500 people. So it just continues to grow with our very tiny little practice. And we just don't know what this is all going to look like yet. So yeah, it's busy. It's very cool though, too. I love going to work and making history. And just being part of, I've met now 2 of the approved manufacturers. So I'm learning about, the different varieties of mushrooms. Who knew there were so many varieties? I had no idea. It feels a little bit like the cannabis world where pretty much I advise patients to not go in and buy a strain. Like if you are looking for medicine, don't go in and just buy a strain by its name because that is not those names kind of get made up, right? Each generation, there's new names of plants. And so it's not really the best way to do it. And I was kind of shocked to see how many varieties of mushrooms there are. And so that's been a learning that we also in Oregon here for our non-medical model, this is another little thing that's going on. The mushrooms are dosed in milligrams. And I don't really know much about mushrooms dosed in milligrams, and neither does anyone else. So
I was like Googling the conversion. I'm like, what is that?
Well, and so
that's so weird to me.
Yeah, and there's not a straight conversion. It's not like there's 10 milligrams per every gram of mushroom. It depends on each variety. And so those have to be lab tested. And all of these things go into the expense of why this is not going to be an inexpensive experience for people. And so what we're doing now is learning about milligram dosage. We are doing product testing. We have to do product testing. And of course we have to do that all legally, right? So, which has been really great and good practice, to, say I'm the client, to come in and watch the flow happen and all the paperwork happen. And are we signing all of our documents? And then actually, what do 2 milligrams of psilocybin feel like, right? Is that actually a microdose? And I'm going to say for me, it was more than a microdose, or what I typically think of as a microdose, which would be 0.1 grams, right? And not 2 milligrams. So the 2 milligrams end up being 0.33 grams. So a third of a gram. It's not a microdose, So
not for me.
Yeah. So there's a lot of learning in that way. I mean, it's the highest dose is 50 milligrams. And for the variety of mushrooms that we are working with currently, that's over 8 grams of mushrooms. That's a lot, right? I mean, people aren't going to be ready to go home in 6 to 8 hours, which is, I think, 6 to 8. I don't have my regulations here with me, but there are certain minimum hours that you have to stay at the service center. And 6 to 8 is great. But I think if someone has over 8 grams of mushrooms, it's going to be a lot longer than that, right? So all of these factors are also coming into play when we have to figure out our price list, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So
I hope there's a hotel next door.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about, right? Wow. And I find it fascinating. I mean, I'm like, I don't even really know who's making these regulations, government or like the board of, but like why they choose the milligrams and how are they choosing the manufacturer, which, I can't even use that word. And the word
Well, we
product.
could say grower, right? They're growers. They're growing mushrooms. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then like, how do they choose which strains? Like, they're just like, is it like a free for all? And hey, we're just going to find the one we like best, like, which is most of the people I know, it's usually by like, well, what's available? What are your friends growing?
Right.
And like, what do you like? Which works better for this kind of, I mean, that's also a weird thing that I can't call it therapy because I thought that was the whole point.
Well, because it's for therapeutic use. So it's this funny little nuance with language, right? And psilocybin itself is therapeutic, or it is often therapeutic. It can be therapeutic, right? So I think that's the idea behind it, but we have to say, but we're not providing therapy at all. So, which I'm not a therapist, so I'm not providing therapy anyway.
True. And this is interesting because, I mean, have you seen or have you guys discussed the need for then, like preparation and integration outside of the service center? Or is that going to be part of the package deal where you get, X number of preparation sessions and then you get the journey and then you get X number of integration? Is that even part of the regulation? So
the regulations are that each client must have one preparation session with the facilitator and then be offered an integration session. So, yeah, that doesn't feel like enough for me personally, but, and we're trying to figure all of this out too in our practice. How do we do that? And when you offer someone integration, according to the rules, you can offer them integration, and then you also have to give them referrals to other people too. So you're not the only person that you're saying they can integrate with, right? Which is great. And it's a lot of that's to like prevent power differentials or people feeling pressure to have to work with somebody. They can work with someone else. But where are the other options? We don't know where the other options are yet. And in our practice, yeah, we're kind of trying to figure that out. Our plan for right now, in fact, on Thursday, we are going to make our first preparation video. So because we have such a long wait list and there aren't other Actually, I believe there's 2 other service centers that have been approved so far, but no one's open. We're not open yet either. We're only open when we're doing our trial runs to try to get ourselves to be able to be open for real clients. Gosh, I forgot where I was.
No, the integration. And it's funny because I'm sitting here going, hey, integration coaches, there's a whole group of people that are going to be coming to you. And, I know thousands of them. So.
Yeah, you do. I mean, and I've thought of that too. Well, maybe instead of actually facilitating, maybe, we don't know yet. We're really trying to figure it out. But yeah, so I do, we're certainly going to encourage everyone for integration. And in our practice, I also don't just see that we'll meet somebody once and say, awesome, here's your big dose of psilocybin. I mean, some folks may have a lot of tools and be ready for that. And I think most people don't. So we're going to start these preparation videos. These will just be free. Little tips and tools for like self-care and meditation and mindfulness and gratitude, and really try to share some of those tools with people ahead of time before they're even called from our wait list, so that they can start to maybe practice those or integrate those somehow in their life so that they're more prepared when the time comes for their experience. But it's part of the craziness is that figuring out everything, figuring it all out and figuring out each step of the way as we go. And then, it's fun though. It's actually really, really fun.
I love this, Heather. I just keep thinking about, when you first called me up to explore joining the mastermind and then you joined the group mastermind, it was like, you were just at this place, like you've trained under some of the best herbalists in the world. You've spoken on stages. You've had a lot going on in the last, year and a half that I've known you. And now it's like there's this whole opening. Like you've just created this whole other, career. And it's kind of like this trailblazer that you are, like in the cannabis nursing, psychedelic nursing, now Psilocybin Service Center. How do you feel about your journey over the last year and a half? Like, do you wake up saying to yourself, like, wow, how did I end up with all of this in such a short time, really?
I've definitely said that about this service center work. Like, how is it me? How am I the person? And so grateful. I mean, not asking that in a way that I don't want it to be me, but I'm just amazed actually that I kind of landed here. And you mentioned earlier about our moon school, our little kind of secret little moon school we're doing on the side. And, I know that played a role in this happening for me. Putting my intentions forth and what I'm looking for in life, which I haven't really been specific. I wasn't saying, well, I want to be a psilocybin facilitator and I want to do this service center work. I just knew I want to do things that feel aligned for me. And so this is, I love going to work, which is great. And I'm still independent. So, I'm my own boss. And I like that part. I think that's certainly easier for the service center in the long haul if we have people who are contractors versus employees too, which is kind of the model that we're planning to do for now. And I think, this is just the beginning. I don't know what this will turn into. I don't know if I'll be working at a service center for years or if I'm going to move on and maybe help other people start their service centers in other places. I've learned a lot already, and I just know that education is going to keep going over the next year. So I'm really committed to helping Epic be Epic, right? Be the best it can, and really serve. It's amazing to read the emails that we get in our wait list, and just a lot of people feel desperate for something different. It's amazing how many folks have been waiting and waiting. I get these emails and will say, I've been researching this for years. I am so glad this is actually finally available for me. And, some of the negative feedback and press that we've gotten over, the cost of having psilocybin experience isn't necessarily a deterrent to everyone. I feel like a lot of that comes from folks who already have access to psilocybin and who've already had an experience before, and that's great. I mean, we're certainly not saying don't go, go do your mushrooms and have your experience and heal and do what is good for you. But for so many people, they're not going to take psilocybin if it's illegal, right? And they don't want to go home with their little sack of mushrooms and take them by themselves in their house. They actually really want to be with someone they feel safe with in a legal place where they're not going to get in trouble. And so, that's the message that we just keep getting and getting. Oh my God, I'm so glad this is finally legal and available for me. And, more than half our wait list are people from out of Oregon, which I think is part of how this is just the beginning of really big change, right? Because anyone who comes from another state, from Texas and Alabama and Ohio, and then can have a healing experience or transformational experience and then head back to their home, that, then the word spreads, right? And I think that's going to be, I hope that's transformational for a whole culture over time. Yeah, that's my hope.
That's my prayer too. It's interesting you mentioned this, there's criticism over cost. And of course, this has been an ongoing conversation since day one. And it's just, it's not just the psychedelic world. It's, our world. It's just kind of like, how do we come into balance with this idea of money and accessibility and providing healing to all that need? But there's also reality, like, not just you, but other people I've interviewed over the years, it takes more than just one facilitator. It's, you're doing this in a legal regulated place that is, there's rent, there's staff, there's time, there's energy, there's the legal fees, there's the regulatory fees. And then I think what people forget is, like you just said, not everybody is just going to try this at home by themselves. Some people, like I always think of my family members. They would never get up and take things by themselves or go to some random ceremony at a friend's house or fly down to the jungle of Peru. They would need to be in a place that was held and it was safe, they would probably only do it in a legal environment. So yeah, I think what people are forgetting is, yes, right now it might seem very high or very inaccessible, but we have to really focus on the positive movement here. Like, I do personally believe this movement is still heading in the right direction for maybe more underground to open up or more decriminalization, which, then gives other people an opportunity to work with it, maybe in, an underground setting, but without repercussions. So I encourage people to really, and I've, every single interview I've had recently has said this, let's focus on the positives that are happening in the psychedelic movement. And yes, I think eventually there's going to be some balance, like all supply and demand. It's like when the first iPod came out, it was so expensive. Now they're giving them away for free when you renew your contract or whatever it is, And I think we just have to keep in mind how new this is and everybody's still figuring it out. And you and other people I've interviewed have mentioned the amount of time it's been taking just to learn the regulations. Like, you have to pay people for that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a lot, I mean, and really the folks at Oregon Health Authority are still figuring them out too. I mean, they're very clear here for the most part, but we'll come up against something and in our, we collaborate with other folks in the community. I think that's a really important part of psychedelic work across the board is collaboration. I mean, that's really how we're going to help more people. But we'll talk, we'll have like a little chat with someone else. Well, I don't really understand. This is how I understand this regulation. And this is how I understand this regulation. And then we have to, type up a letter to the Oregon Health Authority. Can you help us figure this out? And so really everyone is still figuring it out. I mean, there's a tracking program where you have to track all the psilocybin from like grower to service center to ingestion or waste or whatever happens with it. And, that's actually not really ready until September. So now we're using this like one that's a temporary one, so we're learning, and we have to learn that. And then the people at the state are learning it too. And so it's a lot of collaboration with also the state, right? Because we all want to do it the right way. And I think also, as far as cost goes, well, one of the big challenges is because it's a Schedule I drug still, just like cannabis. I mean, there's so many similarities for me and in these two worlds of plant medicine. It's difficult to have a nonprofit that supports this work, right? Because that's a federal designation. So we have a pay it forward fund. We're highlighting other places that are opening. I think I know that the school that I work for, they're looking to open a service center that will be a little larger than the one that we have. And so that will be more accessible to folks because it will also be a practicum center. So new facilitators can get their practicum hours there, right? And so there are going to be other ways, I think, that psilocybin will be more accessible for our particular. We just have this very tiny little place. We hope to grow now that we're in it and seeing what it's like and already experiencing, kind of full-time service center work. We actually hope that someday we'll have a bigger place because that's how we can really start to offer some retreats and group settings and whatnot. And that, of course, can be less expensive for participants. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the group setting thing, which a lot of people have discussed. And of course, I believe in, is that might be one of the only answers. Now, do you know, is the regulation right now allowing for small groups, or is it like, oh, it's only one-on-one? Are there rules around that?
Yeah, no, groups are definitely allowed. Yep, group administration. And there's some, specifications in the regulations about groups. But I do think that's a really great, it is a great way for so many reasons. One is cost, and two is that there's a lot of incredible work that can happen when a group of people are together. There's also some skill in putting a successful group together to really kind of looking at people and how are they going to work in the same setting together. So, those are things that I will need to learn. But yeah, there's going to be all kinds of options. And I do agree with the decriminalization. That right there opens doors for people in all different ways. Here in Oregon, we've decriminalized drugs, all drugs, actually. I think that was in 2020. Can't remember if that's 2020 or 2021. But gosh, that gives a freedom to folks to not be trying things under the guise of fear, right? Especially when you're involved in psychedelics, mindset is actually pretty important. And to have this mindset of like, oh shit, I'm going to go to jail if I'm caught or whatever it might be, it really can affect a lot of people, if you're not a practiced criminal, like some of us are just historically, it's a different kind of feeling. So just decriminalization is huge for allowing, I think, more access to people too.
Huge.
Yeah.
I've definitely had that, by the way, during a ceremony or a trip where all of a sudden there's that like moment of like, oh my God, that must be the cops coming.
Yeah.
I have to say one time the cops actually did show up, which that was a whole other... That was not fun. Let's just say that.
No,
but thank God everybody was
so.
okay.
Yeah.
But they showed up for something totally unrelated. But when you're tripping and there's a whole group of people tripping and the cops knock on the door, it's definitely the weirdest thing ever.
High stress.
It's super high stress.
I don't know if my son would like me to tell this story.
No.
I'm just going to tell a cop story, but I think I won't right now.
We've all had our things.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, I want to ask you a couple questions about where you were before you joined the True Path Entrepreneur Group Mastermind and where you are now. And not just what we talked about, but you as a person. Yes, things have taken off. Your first online apprenticeship, teaching at a psilocybin training, now the director at this psilocybin service center. Speaking on stages at conferences, which I thought was just incredible. But how have you transformed?
I definitely have more confidence now, or even if I don't always feel like I have the confidence, I'm telling myself I do. um, I would say I also really felt before the program, and why I came is because I felt like I'm not a businesswoman. I don't really get business. I don't love all the rules of business. I still don't love all the rules. It's stressful for me. I actually I this year became an LLC. And then I went to and I screwed up on the paperwork, and it took like 4 months. I couldn't open my bank account. So I finally go to open my business bank account, and I wasn't allowed to do it because I get a check from a CBD company where I work for their nurse line. And cannabis is federally illegal, even though hemp is not, because they passed the Farm Bill in 2018, which I told the guy at the bank, but it doesn't matter at the bank. So I couldn't get a business bank account. And which actually is okay, because when I looked down at the 2 checks I was going to deposit in to open my business bank account, one was from the psilocybin training program and one was from the psilocybin service center. So, and there are no banks that will work with those psilocybin centers yet. So, which is how cannabis began. Even the 3 cannabis banks that now will work with cannabis businesses aren't working with psilocybin businesses yet. So the universe gave me a little favor there, right? So I didn't get my whole business shut down and my business bank account shut down. I don't even have one. But before I was in the mastermind, I wouldn't even have gone to the bank to do that, or wanted to do the LLC, or, I don't know. I think in the program, one, you didn't hide, like that wasn't the focus, all these particular business rules and how all of this works. And I did some of that on my own with a group called SCORE, and it's actually a national business that's free for small business entrepreneurs. They give you support. And so my fellow Frank, who I work with there, he's got the guy who's kind of talked me through those LLC. What does this mean? How do you do your taxes and all of these things, which has been really helpful. But if that had been what our program was about with you, I don't know how that would have gone for me. So, but also you work with spiritual entrepreneurs. So it was very apparent that you understand that market research, those words are scary to people like me. So we changed the words, and oh my gosh, when I was talking about doing the heart research and this and that, somebody said, "Oh, well, that's market research." And I was shocked. Oh my God, I'm doing market research? What? So so I appreciate how you really have a handle on us spiritual entrepreneurs. Yeah. And so I think I grew in my confidence, and really we had a group, and the group was helpful too, to see that everybody has good days and bad days. And, we all struggle a bit with imposter syndrome sometimes, and our bank accounts. And, what I've come to, I also did some work with the gene keys over the last year too, which was new to me. And my gene key for prosperity, I can't remember what number it is, but it's all about really truly having faith. And if I follow my heart and just what my heart tells me to do, then I'll be okay. And so I loved that. It takes a lot of pressure off, actually. And it's been working, because that's what I feel like I'm doing. If I get a job opportunity or a phone call and it feels right, then I go for it. And if it doesn't, then I don't. And that seems to be working for me. So I think the biggest thing I gained was confidence. So thank you.
Confidence and faith. And actually, I really love that gene key, because it's so funny. It's really so simple. Have faith in ourselves, believe in ourselves, follow the heart, and really get that mind, get ourselves out of our own way. But, ironically, this is the hardest things for most humans to do. But I could start the mastermind on day 1 and say, "Hey guys, here's the answer to everything. Get out of your way, have faith in yourself, and follow your heart." And people be like, "But how do I do that?" And that's the reality. This is why I find, even me, or any entrepreneur, we all need the support to really like have that mirror and see ourselves and differently and change our perspective around what it is that we're doing so we can have more faith and confidence in ourselves in our heart's path. And what I've seen with you is when you're really just tuning into like what feels good, what feels aligned, what's kind of, landing in your lap, and you have an opportunity to say yes or no. And you've been just so amazing, and you're open, you're saying yes, and if something you don't like doesn't vibe, you walk away. And then it's like, I do see it. It's like the universe just kind of conspires to move you onto the right path, and now all of a sudden you're in international news. Wondering how you got there. Well, let's talk about what you want to be putting out there in the world in the next, 6 to 12 months. Like, you mentioned something that I personally wouldn't be surprised if this kind of falls in your lap, or maybe you're consulting with other service centers because now you've read the, 20,000 pages of rules and you could help expedite opening service centers, or, maybe it's facilitation, maybe it's speaking on stages more. But what is it you want to, like bring to life in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, I really want to see Epic succeed. So that is a huge part of what I hope to see happen in the next 6 to 12 months. And although I've been really, really busy, I also want to see all my students succeed. And so that feels important to me, to make sure that I really am spending the time and focus on that as well. And yeah, I'm ready for the stage more, actually. And I made a commitment to myself that I really want to get paid to speak, because, I've saying yes to so many things. I've also learned a lot. And when I have an opportunity to present somewhere and I have to pay for travel arrangements and pay for airfare and then also pay to register for the conference, then I'm wondering why the heck I'm going, So, and I know that a lot of conferences are like that, but you know what? Then maybe those aren't the ones for me. So, so we'll see how that unfolds. I am going to be speaking at the Good Medicine Confluence in July, which is in Colorado. And this year, actually, it's in the Puma Hills Wilderness. So kind of excited to get out into the woods of Colorado, up in the mountains. And I'm going to talk about cannabis and cancer care there. That'll be kind of a longer, more intensive class. And then I'm going to also teach about death and green burials, because we didn't talk about death yet. But that's also has been a very present part of my path for about the last 6 years, and is related to the work I do with cannabis and cancer care. And I've just learned a lot, and I've helped a lot of people cross the Rainbow Bridge, as we might call it in Waldorf school. And it doesn't have to be scary, and it doesn't have to be horrible. And, or for the person who's going, or for the people who are still here. And so again, culturally, we're so removed from this reality that we are all going to die. It's the only sure thing about birth, right? Is that there's going to be a death at some point. So, I feel really committed to sharing that with people, and just some of the tools. How can we do this? How can we do this and recognize the sacredness of this transition for that person and that person's family and loved one? So, I think that's going to be a really great presentation. And that's coming. I actually have my own green burial story of my first like really dear friend who died, who we worked with and lived with and helped her die. And she wanted to have a green burial. And so we, on the land that we lived on, which is Fox Hollow Forestland now, a nonprofit, we were all living there at the time, and we did a green burial. And so we went and found a beautiful spot in the forest. We actually got permits, which is not something hippie communes do very often, to have our own cemetery. And, we dug a 6 foot long hole. I think it was about 5 feet deep, and didn't hit one rock or one tree stump, which was just kind of a divine thing. And when she died, we kept her at home, and we cleaned her body and we anointed her. And my husband made a board to carry her up into the woods because it was kind of a little bit of a walk that an unfinished, just wood, no chemicals involved. That's part of the beauty of green burial. And so that board was created so we could strap her to the board and also had handles to carry. And we had a very beautiful procession up into the woods where we laid down evergreen boughs in the bottom of the hole or the grave. And then we laid our friend down, and then we put more pine boughs and flowers and prayers and songs, and then we buried her. And it was so powerful and moving and amazing, actually, that I am still just so grateful. That was my children's first experience of death up close. And I want it to be that way for more people. It should really be that way for more people. And so, I mean, and chemicals, like that's just a whole nother topic, but I'm very anti-chemical. And especially when someone dies, why would we fill them with chemicals and then put them into the earth? To me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it is the way typically that things are done right now. So I'm hoping to kind of educate and share that there are other options, and there are a lot of other options. So
I'm sitting here going, wow, I'm glad I have my own land. I guess I would probably have to get a permit, right?
Probably
or not,
a permit.
Or just not tell
anybody.
It's
a good idea to get your permit. Because somebody's digging a new garden and another, 10 years later, that might be a little shocking. But
Heather, I actually really would love to see if you can fit it in the next couple years, depending what happens with the psilocybin thing. I've been saying this for years because, there's some other clients in the mastermind program over the years who've done, death doulas, green burials, worked in this death realm. Then there's the death psychedelic realm, which I think is also going to be highly interconnected. I still think there's just a need for like some kind of a program or a discussion or, people like me who are dealing with aging, an aging parent where, there's no death yet, but it's definitely on the horizon. And I do believe that it's like you said, like we're so culturally disconnected and so afraid of it. And I do believe a lot of people who are working in this kind of psychedelic realm want to also see the process and the rituals of death change, because there haven't really been any, even though it's, it's in ancient ways. And so many people are coming to psychedelic, whatever we call it now, since I can't call it therapy, but psychedelic therapeutic experiences to help them process through end of life. And it's all interconnected. So just seeding it out there, because I personally think this has been missing for a long time. And I don't know that many people doing it. And I know there's more and more discussion around death and this death process and end of life. Even when I interviewed Paul Stamets, when they passed the organ measure 109, it was about this. It was about like, how do we provide end of life experiences so people can go with more dignity, whether it's them or their loved ones or all of them together. I mean, who knows? Maybe there's a way to have like end of life ceremonies together where you all process through it in a group or in a family. I mean, I could see lots of this, and I keep praying that there's a day where we can go on these like death retreats. That's what I want to see by the time I'm older. Like I want to choose my own death and just have a beautiful like that, like dig my own grave.
Or maybe tell someone where you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I know in the world of psilocybin, that is definitely that's definitely the folks who I'm drawn to, really, are folks who have terminal diagnosis and are facing end of life, just because that's what I work with a lot. And there's definitely people reaching out for that too. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think death is easy. I mean, when I've been with people who are dying, they're working. It's work. It's like labor. I mean, it's so amazingly similar to birth, which I worked in the birth realm for, the first half of my adult life. And I can see when people are dying, it's still hard work. And the first, one of my first hospice nurses I met, which was so great, she said, when you're born, your mother births you into being, and when you're dying, you're birthing your own soul.
Mm.
And you can see that work that's happening for, they really are going through a labor to birth their own souls. And so, you know, that's for me where I can recognize the sacredness, you know. So, and I think we just need to talk about it more. So I'm ready to talk about it. I mean, my dad just died in September, and, you know, I flew home to be with him and then with my family. And, you know, people don't even know really that you can be with your loved person after they died. They don't have to leave in 10 minutes. There's no reason to call anybody to, you know, my dad died at home, which was really beautiful. He died at home with, let's see, 7 of his grandchildren there and his best friend and all 3 of his children and my mother. And so that was pretty great, actually, you know, and these sweet grandchildren like rubbing his feet and holding his hand. And, you know, and he died, and there was kind of this flurry of like, oh no, we need to call. And I said, no, we're not calling anybody. There's no rush. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for anybody to come. So, and it was really great because then there is this time for closure, and people are afraid to be around dead bodies because most of us haven't ever gotten to be around a dead body, right? You don't see it because people are kind of whisked away. And then if you do see somebody, you know, it's usually an open viewing of in a casket, and there's makeup and all kinds of other things. So the loved person doesn't necessarily look like your loved person. So I just think that time is really special and important for people. And, you know, if even just that one little piece of it can change, where we say, okay, let's take an hour or two and just hold dad's hand and just like cry and feel sad and let him listen to all the stories we're going to tell, because it's not like I mean, it's my belief, at least, it's not like somebody dies and then they're just like gone all the way as far away as they can go and they can't hear you anymore. Like, it's all still, that's why it is this sacred time. It's everyone's still there, right? Our spirit person is still there. So yeah.
Oh my God. This is giving me so much hope for the future. Ah. Heather, I am so proud of you. It has just been such a blessing to witness you and your expansion and your growth. And, you know, first of all, thank you for trusting in me and the mastermind and the group and the community. And then also, like, most of all, thank you for the work you're doing out there. Because this is like, this is just something I visualized, you know, 20 something years ago. I knew there'd be this day, and it's, to me, even just listening to you talk, I'm like, I cannot believe we are witnessing this happening in our lives. Like, this is real. And it's exciting, and it's messy, and it's weird, and we're going to be ups and downs and roller coasters. And, you know, I try to be an optimist and focus on the positive. And, you know, let's honor the people out there on the ground. And Heather, and in addition to some of my other clients, are the trailblazers out there. And it's a lot of work. So go easy on them. Stop the criticism. Let's stay focused and positive. And Heather, I'm so excited for what's to come. We're going to have all your links right here so people can reach out to you. And we'll have to bring you back as things start to expand more and more in your own business and your world and your life.
Yeah. I look forward to sharing as it all unfolds. I'll let you know.